All right, we got the go-ahead now to get moving along here, so we'll start this meeting. I'm Stephen Ray, representing the Department of Public Safety. We will begin off to my left here and do introductions, then we'll go around the room quickly and do that as well.
James Chambers, CenturyLink Large Telecom.
Rob Dennett, representing the Iowa EMS Association.
Blake DeRucci, Iowa Homeland Security Emergency Management 911 Program Manager.
George Griffith, representing the Iowa Peace Officers Association.
Mike Bryant, representing the Iowa Professional Firefighters.
Rob Roder, representing Iowa State Sheriffs and Deputies Association.
Sally Hall, representing Iowa APCO.
Rob Coppert, representing Iowa DENA.
Bob Seivert, representing Iowa Emergency Managers.
Mark Murphy, representing Iowa Firefighters Association.
Jack D'Angelo, Sully Telephone, representing small telcos.
Dave Kaus, representing PCS providers.
Okay, thank you.
Dwayne Voss with Raycom.
Diana Richardson with Raycom.
Gail Boki with Telecommunications Access Iowa.
Wayne Johnson with CenturyLink, representing Large Telco as an alternate.
Tracy Bearden, Polk County Emergency Management.
Josh Humphrey, Iowa County Emergency Management.
Carol Lund Smith, Iowa Law Enforcement Academy.
Marcia Slycord, Pella Police Department.
Jeff Anderson, Marion County Emergency Management.
Diane Sievert, South Central Iowa.
Brian Midwell, Westcom.
Donahue. Stephen Rodriguez, ICN.
Tammy Rodriguez, ICN.
Curtis Pion, Polk County Sheriff's Office. Terry McClanahan, Dallas County Sheriff's Office.
Landon Lofsgaard with Motorola.
Sherry Schmitz with Motorola.
Doug McCaslin, Warren County.
Brent Long, Polk County Sheriff's Office. Craig Allen, Swick.
Helen Trinovich, Deputy Swick.
Jim Lundstead, DHS OEC.
John Paoli, Iowa Homeland Security. Back to you up front.
Okay, thank you, Rob. Who do we have joining us on the phone today?
Marilyn Stainer, Worth County.
Okay.
Shane Birch, Tritech Software Systems.
Okay. Anyone else on the phone? Okay, we'll go ahead and move forward then. Looking for an approval of the February 9th, 2017 minutes.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye opposed. Approval of today's agenda.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye opposed. Okay, State of Iowa Administrator Blake.
Thank you. I know we have a legislative update later on in the agenda, but just a real quick update. Senate Study Bill 1082, which was our 911 departmental bill, has now become Senate File 454 and reassigned into Appropriations Committee. So it passed out of the State Government Committee last week, so it made it past the first funnel. So it remains alive at this point. There was an amendment placed on it. The most significant part of that amendment allows for a vote at the local service board level for the emergency management coordinator. So that's what the bill looks like now. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on that, discussing the ins and outs, because I think we've done that the last couple weeks. But if anyone wants to talk about that, I know, like I said, it's coming up there's a section for legislative issues coming up later on as well, so I can address any questions at that point. To continue on, right now there are 24 counties capable of receiving text to 911, so a significant increase from last month. I think we did about 10, an increase of about 10 from the last month. Yesterday, 39 people attended the NENA GIS course. I think it was well received. It was all day. The State Emergency Operations Center was full, so that was very successful. I think we'll continue to look to do that statewide training, maybe some more GIS training, whatever training we can help out with would be great, and that's coming up on the agenda as well. A few other items. We still need 3 expenditure collection forms, and those are from Des Moines County, Emmett County, and Mills County. I bring that up just as a reminder that beginning next month, when we do the quarterly surcharge payments, if I don't receive those, they begin to lose a percentage of their quarterly surcharge. So if you have, I've reached out to those folks, they're aware that they are delinquent at this point, but if you have any push with community members or the PSEP coordinators, please push them as well. Lastly, an initiative I wanted to bring up, we are looking at using or trying to get alley information for state GIS purposes. Right now, as most of you are aware, counties are able to only get their alley drop for free once a year, which for the GIS work that we're doing, the comparisons that we need to be able to do to look at those accuracy rates, that's not enough. So there's already a section in 34A that allows us or gives us the authorization to spend money to receive alley information. So we're looking at doing that, and it would also be in conjunction with our Alert Iowa program. So not 911 wouldn't bear the entire cost of that. It's about $60,000 a year. Just wanted to make you aware of it. And that would be, we would get that on a quarterly basis, but that's the annual cost. So want to make you aware of it. We haven't signed the contract yet. If anyone has concerns, we'd certainly listen to those. But again, it's gonna help us with our accuracy rates for GIS down the road. So, and that concludes my report unless there's any questions.
What 3 counties?
Sorry, they are Des Moines County, Emmett, and Mills.
Blake, is the 60,000 the total cost or the 911 cost?
Total cost. So, you know, if we look at splitting it with Alert Iowa, it'd be $30,000 a year coming out of 911.
Okay, Mike.
Mr. Chair, I'd just like to take this opportunity. I had a couple of different points since the last meeting where I needed some clarifications on some questions or clarification and verification of what I had told some people, and I had talked to Blake and wanted to thank him at this meeting, as well as make a note that he was very good, very thorough, very easy for us and the folks that asked me to understand, as well as very quick on his response. So I just wanted to thank him for that and acknowledge that.
Is there any other questions or comments for Blake? Okay, we'll move on to reports. Any comments from our technical people? Any updates or anything they'd like to share?
Yeah, I'm quite sure everybody saw the news on how they can spy on you. Your television, your smart television, your smart tablets, and your smartphones are very, very vulnerable unless you take some extra precautions. That's all I want to say.
Okay.
Anything else? Okay. Interoperability Governance Board, Mr. Allen.
Good morning.
Morning.
So there are 3 topics. The first one is the skip. I want to remind everyone that we'll be doing an updated Iowa skip this year. Just talked to Jim Lundstedt, our DHS representative, and their letters are going out shortly to help us coordinate the time on that. It'll be it will be much different than anything we've seen before. We're going to dissect Iowa a little differently because we're doing business a little differently. The primary lines will be 4 tracks, and then each of those tracks will be measured against the interoperability continuum. and we're tying money to it this time. We've never done that before, but how much are we spending and what are we spending it on, and how do those time and labor things relate? And you kind of, where you put your most money is where you should get your greatest return on investment. So are we doing that? Kind of a metric, and then timelines as to when we can expect those things to be done. The second topic is there's an LMR summit. There's been a lot of perhaps confusion about what the statewide radio system is, what it will do, what it won't do, how it is designed, and what it should do. So we're going to cover 3 topics in this very room on Monday. The first thing we're going to talk about is, what is a 6? The second thing is if you want to use it for interoperability or operability, how do you go about doing that? How do you apply for it? And then the third topic that we're going to cover is, there's a lot of talk about an ISSI switch. And there's a lot of talk going on nationally about ISSI switches. It's not really a switch, it's a software gateway. But is that the right place for Iowa to be? We have one. It's not like there are a multitude of them to choose from. So one came with the system. If we need more than one, who pays for it? Who covers the backhaul cost? And that's, as my research, that's probably the single biggest challenge is, you have this backhaul cost that's ongoing all the time, and you're using the infrastructure fairly insignificantly. Okay, so if you've got the big picture of this is that if you have a radio and you're on a statewide system and you go into a community that has in-building coverage, with manual roaming, you can roam onto that system, you're recognized through the switch, and you would have then that in-building coverage and be able to talk back on your talk groups back to where you're home base from. The flip side of that would be if you're a city or a county and you're then traversing the state, that you would be able to do that again with some form of manual roaming. Challenge is the statewide system's not set up for any talk. It's been talk group steered to specific sites. So if you're from Des Moines and you're outside of Des Moines, the only thing you have access to really is interoperability talk groups or talk groups in that particular area. So it doesn't make a lot of sense when you think about an ISSI unless you're going to pull that radio traffic someplace. So to have that discussion about kind of what people expect, and it's not that it can't do it, it's that do we have the capacity to do it and do we have the budget to do it? So that will be the second topic. The third topic is, the board now has participated in 2 consecutive TIA meetings, so the board is now a full voting member on several of the 25 committees that TIA has. And what does that mean? So what I've just been talking to you about is TDMA 2 slot and the wireline interface committee. So we now have a vote in those committees when those things come up. And it's helpful because the manufacturing community really is seeking more user input. They get it, but they're not necessarily getting it at those kind of meetings. They're getting it through their sales staff and teams in the field. And so we're able to bring, us in South Carolina are able to bring a slightly different perspective as voting members in the room with them. And it makes for quite interesting conversations over a cup of coffee. So anyway, that's kind of where that's headed. There is, at the national level, I just want to bring you up to date, between SAFECOM, it has something to do with the board because it is interoperability. I chair the Technology and Policy Committee for the National Council of SWICs with SAFECOM. We have 2 big issues that are going on that will have an impact on Iowa. One is that we are defining nationally what public safety grade means, so that we can then start working with the vendor community more in, as mission critical is whatever I need is mission critical. If I need mission radios, I run down to Walmart and buy family radios, that's fine. It was in my mission, it's mission critical. But that's not a public safety grade piece of equipment. And then public safety grade, what does the network look like and what should it have? And so there's a whole variety of standards committees that have not yet come to the table that will be asked to participate. And for some of you in the private sector, how does that define a public safety grade telephone system? How does that define a public safety grade backhaul? What is the downtimes and things like that? So there's a lot, it's moving into a lot of places that the conversations have not taken place before. The second thing is that we are looking on, as you see, most of the states, Iowa was one of the last ones to get a statewide voice radio system. And now we're beginning to see counties and locals and others come in and they're paying consulting fees that, from my perspective, are not necessarily in their best interest. $25,000 to $50,000 for a consultant to come in. Don't get me wrong, I'm a consultant. I like doing that. But it's not really, if I'm on the other side of it, if I'm one of you, it's not in my best interest to go out and spend that kind of money to get help. When I should be able to go to some sort of national best practices, because now with all these states having this up and all these counties having it up, they spend a lot of money working through the bumps. Why don't we have an RFP, a nationally adopted RFP that helps us drive towards public safety grade? That will be coming probably sometime next year. That is a very heavy lift if you think about all the stuff that you have to drill down into. So those are some of the things that are on the discussion table. I'm open for any questions any of you might have now that I've bored you to sleep.
Well, I've got one question for you, Craig. With the ISICs coming online, can you give us an update on how many sites or what percentage of sites are online, how many counties are coming online with it?
Okay, so I probably won't do a very good job. I probably should defer to Stephen Rodriguez, but in giving, let me see if I can hit it in, at least in the ballpark, not on home plate, right? So not even within a range, just in the ballpark. 89 sites total. So there will be 89 new towers of some ilk. 84 of those for sure will be doing the RF side. As you know, some of them will have microwave only, where they have to, because it is a microwave backhaul system, totally secured, or not secured, but totally isolated that way. And that was because the RFP required it. The number of towers that are up right now, I would say, is largely usable in the Des Moines area and in Dallas, the Dallas County area. And so how does that work? So what really is the mystique of this is that in rolling out a radio system, you can't give dial tone to a remote location until you have a way to get back to the core. And the cores are, right, you only operate one core at a time. We have 3. This one fails. There's another one to back it up. But everything rolls to that one. You don't operate 2 cores simultaneously, one or the other. And then we have a third one over on the east side. So the risk mitigation for Iowa was flooding. Could we get it in the center? Yep, well, you need to go to the side. Well, could we get it on the other side? Yep, we've had it there. So they went with the triple redundancy, if you will. The primary core will operate out of the Des Moines area, and Westcom has been associated with it now, and Woodbury will be coming up before too terribly long. But to get to your question is, how and when would it be ready for me? Okay. The question is, and the challenge is, really it's federal regulatory. Getting through the birds that fly through, because we're not putting up 100-foot towers. They're 3, 4, 5, 600 feet jobs, which means you get into bird paths and, you know, spotted blue ticks and whatever else comes around that may be a hazard, right? The moles in the ground. So they've been struggling with some of that. The other thing that I learned, and you all may have known it, I did not realize that there were as many airports in Iowa as there are. Because if you're a farmer and you've got an airstrip and you have registered it with the FAA, even though you may not have used it in 10 years because you sold your Piper Cub, it's still there. And they can't put anything up within certain flight paths of that. And that has been a real interesting opportunity that I didn't realize we were going to have. I just didn't realize that there were that many airstrips across Iowa. So here, Rob, what's going to happen is it's sort of like a corn crop. You plant the seed and it seems like you wait forever, and then pretty soon you look over and doggone it, it's hip high. And pretty soon you go drive by the field and there's ears popping out, and then 2 weeks later you see a sheller going through and the truck's driving off full of corn. That's the way it's all going on now. We're not seeing it. So they're preloading the huts. All of the stuff that's been approved is already in the huts. They're waiting for the tower to be built and the pads to be poured, and once that happens, they go out. It's plug and play. So seems like you'll wait forever, and then 5 or 10 of them will turn on in 2 weeks. Okay. Then once that happens, to be clear, the acceptance test plan requires that we go out and do a test. So there's 2 ways to test. Can you hear me now? Or a bit error rate test, which tests you through the system. You drive around and do so many test points to see if the coverage is there. If they meet the coverage requirements, the thing could likely be done by, I expect it to be done sometime in 2018. I expect a lot of, a very heavy portion of it to be done this year just because of the way things are lining up. At the end of the day, we could find ourselves hung up over a single tower site that keeps two areas from having that self-healing loop that's necessary. That's just the dilemmas of project management. It's not, it didn't matter who the vendor was, they're going to run up against the same challenges of that project element. So what happens is it doesn't look like anything's happening. The corn's growing. It's showing up out of the ground now. There's towers in places and people are using it. But when it happens, it's going to turn loose really fast. And they've got their foot on the gas pedal and they're not touching the brake very much. So did that help? I mean, that's kind of the I'm not sure I answered your question, but that's kind of a 100,000-foot overview.
Well, that answered my question pretty well. And there was some curiosity in how it was coming along, and haven't been able to make the SXB meeting, so I wasn't sure how the implementation was going. And I've had some people ask me if I knew how things were going. So I thought I'd ask you.
And Stephen, anything you want to add or anything that I?
Yeah, the only thing I would add is that we are doing civil work in 33 different counties.
Okay.
So we'll be putting up towers.
So we're doing civil work in 33 different counties, and that is the slow part. You don't see that. That's where making sure all of the stuff is met and that the towers are properly designed. They have to do all of that before they can order steel. Once they order steel, think of it like a Maserati. Their foot's on the gas, they're not touching the brake, and they got it in high gear. And I mean, these kind of days, a lot of stuff can happen. We get those tornadoes, we get those freezes, we get that, it slows it down with snow. The ground's got to be hard enough they can get heavy trucks out there. The more rain we get, the more it gets in our way. But we've really had a pretty mild winter. I mean, for all things considered, it's been a very mild winter. And if we can keep that, I realize the farmers may not warmly embrace it, but for those of us thinking about constructing a system, it's in our best interest to have a dry spring. Anything else?
Thank you, Craig. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Have you done the RF integration yet? As far as whether you've got RF interference from other carriers?
So they do predictive. They do those predictive, and that's what the bit error rate test will actually do for us when we go out and do the testing. So you do a pre, you build it, and then you do a post. So the pre was they went out and ran several, what's in the area, what RF interference should we have? Do we have a hospital that's run a bunch of 800 megahertz paging or something like that? You look through the FCC licenses, that's what the vendors do. It doesn't matter which vendor you select, they all pretty much go through and run certain pre-tests to make sure that if we put the tower site here, it's gonna work or should work. But then it's the post, really, that you go in afterwards and you physically go out with equipment and you run tests to see if it shows up. And then I like, my personal bias is that once we've done that, you take users out and you run, can you hear me now? Because the confidence levels go way up when you get people on the system. But I'll defer to Rob or anybody else that probably knows more about that than me. But the pre-part said it should work, all of that stuff. They're building it, then they do a test. And if it doesn't, they got to make it right. So it doesn't, from our perspective, it doesn't matter if it doesn't work the way they've designed it. They're not going to get sign off until it works. Anything else? Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Greg. Okay, legislative issues.
Okay, thanks, Steve. There's 4 bills that I'll talk about just very briefly. Senate File 195 is the IPERS for dispatchers by Danielson. I have not heard any progress on that. I believe it's still alive. And then Blake mentioned Senate File 454, and I believe there's a companion bill in the House, HSB 162. And I don't really see any red flags or anything that would be not in the best interest of 911 or dispatchers in those. House File 429 is a 911 call confidentiality bill. And again, I don't really see anything that would be adverse to the provision of 911 in any of those bills. If all of these should pass, it'd be a very good year for 911 in Iowa. I guess as these bills move forward through the legislature, keep in touch with your local legislators and your associations and your lobbyists, and maybe we can get them, have a good year.
Okay. You have anything, Mike? Anyone else have any comments? Okay. We're going to skip over 7A for just a moment, and we're going to go to unfinished business first. And I'll turn this over to Blake. It's on the draft policy that all of you were given.
All right, we took a look at this last month as well. Added a couple things. You know, last month, I think really the only section or thing that was flushed out was the training. So I basically went back and put a little bit more policy around council travel and public education as well. And just for those that are jumping in here, this is on the how we propose to spend the $100,000 that we get annually as a state, as a community, for council travel, public education, and training for 911. So I think we were pretty close last month. I sent this draft out last week. Haven't heard any feedback, so would like to get this approved. So I know there's another request for some funding later today, and get this out for everyone to be on the same page with what they can request.
No.
And just as a reminder, as you're looking at this, the second paragraph there, and it says that's taken directly out of the code section, so it's nothing that I made up or anything like that. Just trying to build out exactly what it is that means, and putting some priorities to it.
So, any comments from council?
That's at all. I thought maybe it was just council members.
Just in general, just because I hate uncomfortable silence, the policy basically just makes sure that we're focusing on a statewide or regional perspective as we're looking at training or public education. So it's not, one PSAP or one county that's not going to allow any other participants in their public education or their training. So just putting that policy behind there.
Well, I think the policy looks great the way it's written so far. I don't see and didn't see anything negatively impacting the intent of, I think, what the legislature kind of wished that these funds be used for. I do think, however, that the priority, especially under public education portion, should be the website, and I'm glad that it's listed there first, and then secondary consideration be given to other public education things. I think a statewide website that's educational to the public and provides a repository for documents from this council. I know they're currently on the HSUD website. That's fine, but the public needs to have access to a lot of that information, and I think that is a huge priority. And as if I were one of the legislators that drafted the bill last year, knowing that was the intent, I think that if we got something out publicly, they would be really happy about that and continue funding at this level, because I think that funding level is a fantastic thing and needs to be done in the state of Iowa.
Any other comments? I'll be looking for a motion to approve this.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
I'd like to make that motion.
okay.
And Iowa Nina will second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, it shall be adopted. We will now go back to number 7. And Carol, you want to?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Once we found out that there were some training funds available through a grant, I reached out to Stephen Ray and indicated that the Law Enforcement Academy would appreciate utilizing some of those funds for what would be considered over-the-top training. It's not the basic training, which is actually going on right now as we speak at the academy, but it's above and beyond that. So the first request is for an active shooter class. We've had multiple agencies request this of the academy, and it's either been a time restraint, a budget restraint, especially for the smaller PSAPs to be able to afford to send people to that. So for that particular class, which is an 8-hour, we're requesting the $3,300, which is the total fee for the class, up to 50 students. Okay, so we're requesting that one, and then as a follow-up on that, June 13th through the 15th, we would offer a CTO class, a Communications Training Officer class. Again, the cost at that is typically $399 or $400. So the Academy is requesting half of that be paid for up to 30 students. We don't want the class to get any bigger than that because there's so much interaction required. But we do have requests from not only the central metro areas wanting some communication training officer slots available, but other places around the state as well. We did hold one last year. It went over extremely well. And the trainers from California kind of requested, if we want the active shooter, could we do the CTO program at the same time for travel costs, and then gave us a little bit of a break as far as the travel costs. I think it was $200 to $250. So we're requesting a total of $9,300. That would be $200 per person up to 30 people, plus the $3,300, of course, for the active shooter class. Any questions for me?
So that this would be for the participants in these classes, they would not have to pay for this? There wouldn't be PSAP costs?
The PSAP would have to pay half of the 3-day CTO school. It's normally a $400, $399 is their fee, so basically $400. We're asking for half of that fee to be paid in order to bring the cost down so that smaller PSAPs could afford to send someone to become a training officer, because oftentimes that's a real budget constraint for smaller PSAPs. Any other questions?
Real quick, Carol, I'm really glad to see you moving forward with this. I think it's an excellent use of the money and would like to see it done on an annual basis and bring those over-the-top classes here.
I already warned Blake that I probably would be returning every year asking for something. Because at the Academy, we are striving to add specialty schools, and this is definitely considered a specialty school when it comes to telecommunicators. We're also doing more above and beyond that, but my role is to take care of those telecommunicators. And so anything that can provide additional training and expertise, I'm all on board for.
Carol?
Yeah.
Do you have any sense on, will you be able to fill these classes? Is it, we have to pay for the seats no matter what? How does that work?
No, what I would predict is if we can't fill the 30 slots, then we will back that off and I will give you an updated amount so that then we would not secure any funds that weren't needed, okay? That's strictly for the registration fees, nothing else.
Very good. I hope we fill it.
I do too. Spread the word, okay?
And just for clarification as well, the active shooter course would be for telecommunicators?
It is geared specifically for telecommunicators, not for officers. They already have specialized training, but telecommunicators are lacking in that active shooter, and let's face it, unfortunately, we're in an active shooter society. So we need to be able to train our folks on what to do when that happens. Any other questions? Yes.
I have one just to meet the criteria of the paper we just passed. I'm assuming that it's pretty much assured that we will get people from multiple PSAPs.
Yes.
I mean, again, you did mention the central area. I guess what I don't want to do is I don't want to pass something and find out that only people from, I guess, if you will, the Des Moines Metro are there.
Right.
Even if it was offered to everybody else.
Right.
Again, I don't know where that fits into the policy. I mean, if it's offered to everybody else, does that make it fit your intent? If they don't sign up, then I don't have a problem.
Right, as long as it's an open registration, it meets my
Yeah,
intent.
and that's the reason for asking for the entire fund for the active shooter,
Right.
so that the PSAP doesn't pay any cost other than their travel and lodging, okay? To make it open for those agencies that really have small training budgets or maybe none.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that we didn't get ourselves caught into something that all of a sudden we find out, well, yeah, we had a lot of people, but they were all from one area, and then somebody says, well, why did we pay for that? Because there
Yeah.
wasn't people from other PSAPs. But as long as it's clear to me that the intent is as long as they were invited,
Yes.
it's not about having to be there.
Yeah,
Okay,
and
thank you.
if I start to see through PSTC that the registrations are heavily in the metro area, then we can start limiting how many an agency can send in order to get those smaller ones to be able to send someone. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thanks, Carol.
I'd like to go ahead and make a motion to approve the request from Carolyn Smith and the ILEA for these 2 training sessions. I think that's a fantastic idea, Carol. Thank you.
Okay, second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Okay, good to go. All right. We have no travel requests. Any business or 911 issues from the floor that anybody'd like to bring up? Okay. Any other comments from the council? Okay, hearing none. Our next meeting will be on Thursday, April 13th at this location again at 9 a.m. And with that, we will be adjourned.